Welcome to the regular Planning Commission meeting for Kern County for April 27, 2017. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Louie?
Here.
Mr. Babcock? Ms. Garcia?
Here.
Ms. Poole?
Here.
Mr. Sprague?
Yeah, I'm here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Ms. Oviatt? Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Great. And I'll announce that for you in the audience that came in, there are agendas at the back of the room in case you missed them to follow the meeting. They're available in the back of the room if you want to grab one, and that's an easy way to follow it. I also want to introduce our Spanish interpreter for those of you that need to be interpreted. You want to come forward, please, and give us your name and tell the people how you're going to operate.
Atrás habían audífonos para las personas que no hablan inglés. Ya se acabaron. Entonces, si necesitan sentarse a un lado de mí, lo pueden hacer.
Thank you very much. And that leads us to item number B, Commissioner member announcements or reports. Do we have any to report tonight? Okay. We'll need a motion for approval of minutes. You've read the minutes in your package, I presume. Do we have any changes on terms, conditions of those? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Poole, second by Commissioner Garcia. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and that moves us to item D, which is cases withdrawn or requests for continuances. There are none tonight. This meeting has actually been cleared so that we can have the workshop that I believe all of you are here for. Item E is a consent agenda, and we have none on that. Public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address the commission on any matter not in this agenda and over which the commission has jurisdiction. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. Please state your name for the record before making your presentation. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to the commissioners tonight on any item that is not on the agenda and is in their jurisdiction? Okay, we have two people. And just let me clarify. Are you wanting to speak on something that's not on the agenda? Let me say it again. This portion of the meeting is reserved for people that would like to speak to the commission in regards to any item that is not, repeat, not on tonight's agenda, but is within the jurisdiction of the commission. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on any item that is not on this agenda? We have one person. Okay, ma'am, would you like to come forward and give your name for the record?
Okay, my name is Jan Gary, spelled G-A-R-Y. And do you need my address?
No. Okay,
Okay,
proceed.
there are two things that I feel are important to our neighborhood. And it may not just be my neighborhood, but many neighborhoods, because I see it all over.
Let me stop you there.
What?
Are these items that are going to be discussed in the workshop that we're having tonight for the general plan update?
Well, as far as I know.
Okay, then we already have it on the agenda. As soon as we go through this, we'll have you come back up and you can give your presentation.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing no one, then we'll move forward to no public hearings other than item number H, which is the general plan workshop for the workshop number 4. And we will open that part of the meeting and take your testimony. And at the end of that workshop, we will then receive it and file for record. We will not be taking any action on it tonight, but we're going to listen to your concerns and to your conversations that you have regarding the general plan amendment number 4 on the workshop. And so with that, I would ask How many speakers in the audience tonight wish to speak in the workshop? Hold your hand up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Would the speakers that are going to speak tonight come forward to the first row so that we can
Mr.
expedite the meeting and the workshop? And when you come to the podium, if you would say your name and spell it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a staff presentation first before
Okay.
we kind of get
All
through
right.
any of the public testimony.
Before
portions.
we take testimony, we're going to have staff presentation by Mr. Murphy. So we'll go to that, Mr. Murphy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Tonight marks the fourth in our series of scheduled interactive workshops before your commission regarding the update to the Kern County General Plan and the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan. The primary topics for tonight's discussion include an overview on the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan map code designations. We're going to have an overview on the Metropolitan Bakersfield Habitat Conservation Plan and the ongoing update process for that plan. Primarily, most of our discussion this evening will revolve around water, and we're going to have an overview regarding the proposed water element by staff. Specifically comments and questions like where do we get our water, what is the Groundwater Management Act of 2014, what type of policies are we proposing to evaluate as part of this update process. And then finally, we will conclude with a discussion regarding housing in California and Kern County. If the clerk could put up the So, as your commission is aware, there are two adopted general plan documents within the county of Kern. The Kern County General Plan, which we extensively discussed, the land use element and conservation element at our last meeting, covers all of the unincorporated areas of the county outside of Metropolitan Bakersfield's sphere of influence. That document was adopted in June of 2004. And then we also have the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan, which was jointly prepared but separately adopted document with the city of Bakersfield. That land covers all areas within the Metropolitan Bakersfield sphere of influence. And as a reminder, as we discussed at your commission's meeting, 5%, roughly 5% of all the land in Kern County falls within the boundaries of the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan. That document was adopted in 2002. It was adopted on December 3rd, 2002 by the Kern County Board of Supervisors, and it was adopted December 11th, 2002 by the Bakersfield City Council. For purposes of tonight's discussion, we are primarily going to be discussing those areas within the Metropolitan Bakersfield planning area. So from a land use element perspective, again, the primary purpose of the land use element is to designate the proposed general distribution and location of land within the county, or the city for that matter. The two components that make up a land use element include both text and graphical information. The text information, again, includes identified objectives, goals, policies, implementation measures. The textual information also includes any detailed descriptions of the various components of the plan. From a graphical perspective, the graphical information is how we identify the general distribution of land, and we visually capture those components in the plan, which are more difficult to explain from a textual purpose. When it comes to the land use element, which we will be discussing tonight, the primary graphical information includes the actual adoption of the general plan land use map. This is the map that identifies whether or not property is designated commercial, residential, industrial, whether it's reserved for resource management, things along those lines. Pages 2 through 4 of your staff report outline the various map code designations that exist in the current Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan. I have a graphic that helps to break out some of that for your commission this evening. Roughly 38% of the general plan is either located within the city of Bakersfield, city boundaries, or is owned by either a federal or state agency. Just over 1% of the land designation from the county's perspective. Again, these numbers up here represent the county's jurisdiction of land use designations. The cities may look a little bit different if you only looked at the land which the city has jurisdiction. But from the county's perspective, Just over 1% is designated for some sort of public facility. 11.83% is designated some sort of residential classification. Under 1% of the unincorporated land within the Kern County General Plan, within the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan, is designated with a commercial classification. And just under 4% is designated with some sort of industrial designation. Over 40% is designated some sort of resource or open space, whether that be for intensive or exclusive agricultural, open space, parks, things along those lines. So again, similar to the Kern County General Plan, it is important for your commission to note just how much of the land that the county controls is actually designated for resource management or resource types of uses such as agricultural and open space, things along those lines. Again, it was interesting, I thought, that within the county, over 11% is designated for residential use within this area. Again, we are an owned land, or I don't own land, we manage land that is directly adjacent to the city of Bakersfield. And that's why there has always been some sort of future thought, consideration, how is that unincorporated area going to build out? How are the infrastructure going to be planned so that it interacts with the city of Bakersfield? So again, there are some residential development, and I found it interesting that we have less than 1% commercial as well. What I'd like to do now is talk and touch base about the Metropolitan Bakersfield Habitat Conservation Plan. So this plan, or Metro HCP, as it is often referred to, is the program in place that addresses the effect of urban growth on federal and state protected plant and animal species within the Metropolitan Bakersfield planning area. So this is a joint program that is implemented by both the County of Kern and the City of Bakersfield and was originally adopted in the early 1990s. What it does is it provides incidental take authorization for urban and rural development and associated infrastructure located within the 404 square miles of Metro Bakersfield. So this conservation plan was the first multi-species HCP in the state of California, and it granted both federal issued Section 10A-1B and state issued Section 2081 take permits for endangered species within the planning area. The plan was a 20-year permit, which has expired in 2014. A short-term 5-year extension to the HCP has been granted, while a new plan is being developed to replace the original plan. The Metro HCP is designed to streamline the process for complying with endangered species laws while allowing economic growth in the Metro Bakersfield planning area. This plan is how the county protects various resource habitats, both locally, but then in the regional context of Metropolitan Bakersfield and the County of Kern. So how this plan works, if your commission is not aware for interested persons or residents, the Metro HCP utilizes a mitigation fee that is paid by applicants for any grading or building permit, and that is a fund to purchase the maintenance, to purchase and maintain habitat necessary to compensate for the impacts of urban development on these endangered species. Currently, the HCP is set at $2,145 per gross acre of disturbance. As I had mentioned, the existing HCP has expired, and we are currently in the process, and we are operating under a short-term extension while a new plan is being prepared. This plan is currently being prepared by the City of Bakersfield in consultation with the County of Kern, with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. This graphic shows the permit area, which again matches the City of Bakersfield sphere of influence and the area covered under the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan, and it further outlines the study area, which is where any conservation land that we acquire or help to enhance can take place in. That total is roughly 3,530 square miles. As proposed, this new 30-year permit will cover permitted activities for 13 listed and non-listed species, including 7 animal and 6 plant species. So the species that are proposed to be covered under the new HCP for Metro Bakersfield include the blunt-nosed leopard lizard, the western burrowing owl, and if I say these name wrongs, I apologize, the least Bell's viero, the Buena Vista lake shrew, the San Joaquin antelope squirrel, the Tipton kangaroo rat, the San Joaquin kit fox, the Alkalali mariposa lily, the rose-flowered larkspur, the recurved larkspur, the San Joaquin woolly threads, Bakersfield cactus, and the Chavox golden aster. And I'm sure I pronounced that incorrectly. In addition, when you have an HCP, you're required to identify the covered activities in which are eligible to be part of the program. As proposed right now, the covered activities for the Metro HCP would include urban development, transportation and circulation infrastructures, flood control improvements, sewer and water treatment facilities, landfills, airports, conservation strategy implementation, and operation and maintenance activities. Like the existing plan, it's important to note that although the covered activities occur within Metropolitan Bakersfield planning area only, most of the covered lands acquired for the program are located outside of Metropolitan Bakersfield in the planning area that is under the jurisdiction of the County of Kern and in unincorporated Kern County. Given the fact that the HCP is in place for a 20 to 30-year process, if adopted, a more stable economic environment is ensured for planning of future development within the area, while also serving to satisfy the conservation goals of state and federal endangered species laws. Now, I'm sure your commission has heard or been aware of the Valley Floor HCP. This Valley Floor HCP would be the conservation program in place outside of Metro Bakersfield that would help to do similar programs that are identified within the Metropolitan HCP. So at this time, the Valley Floor HCP is moving forward. Again, it is the valley area located outside of Metropolitan Bakersfield. It is being proposed as both an HCP for federal permits and then an NCCP, or a Natural Community Conservation Plan for state permits. So the biggest difference between an HCP and an NCCP is that generally an HCP focuses on land acquisition as the primary means for mitigation of impacts, whereas an NCCP can focus on land acquisition and habitat enhancements in areas that are already being conserved. Now, there are other differences. That is a very simple, straightforward difference. There are some differences in terms of what species can be listed within the plan and things along those lines. But it was important for me to let your commission know that the Valley Floor, we are looking at an NCCP in the fact that most of the conservation land is located in the jurisdiction in unincorporated Kern County. And we have a number of projects, the solar projects, the wind projects, the oil and gas industry requires these type of permits. Various water districts requires these type of permits. You know, there's a lot of activity that is not necessarily urban development that still requires this mitigation. So that is why for the Valley Floor HCP, staff is proposing and focusing on preparing as part of the HCP an NCCP so that enhancements can be incorporated into the proposed program. So that some of the efforts in terms of conservation don't necessarily have to be sole land acquisition. The applicants for the plan include the oil industry, water districts, and possibly a few others. The program will be a voluntary request by the property owners, and while Kern County will be the lead agency for processing this project, it is not initiated or being funded by the county. The proposed study area has already been comprehensively analyzed in the oil and gas CAR and is being further analyzed as part of the Metropolitan Habitat HCP. The processing and analysis of this plan will be incorporated into the general plan update, even though it is being prepared independent of the general plan, and preparation of the Valley Floor HCP and CCP will overlap that of the general plan update, and it is anticipated to complete by the end of 2018 as an online interactive plan. Next, I'd like to move the discussion forward to the water element. That has been discussed before in front of your commission before as a result of various ongoing changes to state law and the impact water availability and water resources has on the economic viability of Kern County. It is the intent of staff to include a general plan, in this general plan update, a water element for the first time. That is not one of the required elements, but given the importance of water resources and water availability, staff is recommending we have its own section within the general plan update. At the conclusion of my remarks tonight, we have two water presentations. The first presentation will be from Mr. Curtis Creel with the Kern County Water Agency. Mr. Creel has prepared a PowerPoint and will be presenting to your commission an overview of water management within Kern County. The second presentation will be from Mr. Eric Everett of the Rosedale Rio Bravo Water Storage District. Mr. Everett has also prepared a PowerPoint that he will be presenting to your commission, and he will provide an overview regarding the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014 and the status of that program within the Valley portion of Kern County. Pages 5 through 6 of your staff report provide a general overview of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014, or SGMA, as you may have heard it or is commonly referred to. As a reminder for those watching and for your commission, this legislation was signed by Governor Brown on September 16th of 2014. It included a 3-bill package that effectively established a new structure for the management of groundwater in California. SGMA itself requires formation of locally controlled groundwater sustainable agencies for water basins that have been designated as a medium or high priority by June 30th of 2017. So within the county of Kern, we have 2 basins that have met this designation. The first is the valley portion of the county that is located within the Tulare Lake hydraulic region, so the Central Valley. This basin has been designated as critically overdraft and a high priority basin. The second is in the Indian Wells Valley groundwater area, and it's the Indian Wells Valley groundwater basin located in eastern Kern County. This basin has been classified as a medium priority basin. So upon formation of the required groundwater sustainable agency, SGMA further requires the preparation of a groundwater sustainability plan, or GSP. The GSP must be adopted by January 31st, 2020 for basins identified as critically overdrafted and a high priority, so that would include the valley portion or the valley basin in Kern County, and by January 31st of 2022 for any other basins, so that would be the Indian Wells Valley basin for the county of Kern. Mr. Everett can provide your commission with a status update regarding the process that has been made in the Central Valley. For your commission's information, the Indian Wells Valley area, a groundwater sustainable agency has been formed, and they are currently in the process and are currently underway regarding the formation of various policy and technical subcommittees that are going to contribute to the preparation of the sustainability plan. The general plan will be part of the foundation in which all of these required sustainability plans are based. So in California, land use has and will continue to be under the authority of the county or a city jurisdiction. Unlike land use, however, water and the distribution of water resources does not always fall under the same land use permitting agency. Much of the water in Kern County is managed by various water districts, and those water districts have a various degree of experience in terms of both land use and in terms of both the California Environmental Quality Act and the various process that is required when it comes to building and implementing projects. So ultimately, the establishment of an appropriate permitting structure that includes and integrates both the land use permitting agencies with that of the various water permitting jurisdictions is necessary and will lead to either the success or failure of the sustainability plans. So attachment 1 of your staff report Staff has included a March 27 report that was prepared by the Public Policy Institute of California. This report is entitled Water Stress and Changing San Joaquin Valley. So the report is an overview of the water usage in the county and provides suggested policy development strategies to address the valley's water imbalance and other related problems. If your commission has not taken a look at that document, it is absolutely worth the read, as it does a good job of help laying the foundation of the various challenges that the county faces in terms of groundwater management and our users of that water, and primarily the agricultural community, as they are a big portion of the water users within the unincorporated Kern County. And again, while Kern County is not a water permitting agency, we do have experience in developing policies and programs within various water-constrained areas. As your commission may remember, as part of the Greater Tehachapi Area Specific Plan, your commission recommended, and ultimately the Board of Supervisors approved very focused policies and implementation measures targeted at facilitating development and protecting groundwater in groundwater-constrained areas, specifically the Greater Tehachapi area. Examples of the recommendations and requirements of the Greater Tehachapi specific plan require site-specific water analysis and conservation plans that have to be prepared at the onset of proposed development projects. Projects are required to include water budgets as part of their proposals, and a development cap was established within this planning area that specifically identified the number of residential units that could be developed over the life of the plan to ensure there is enough groundwater to meet the needs of those residential uses. And if we got to a point where we were exceeding that, we would not be able to rely on some of that information, and we'd have to go through and do more focused analysis to determine how much water is available still, and if whether any of our adopted policies need to change. So for the general plan update, staff is proposing to work directly with all of the water districts and stakeholders to evaluate various concepts that could be utilized for the management of land use and groundwater. Many of the suggestions identified by the Public Policy Institute of California are those that planning staff plans to explore in our discussions with the water districts. If I could get the overhead projector one more time. I'll just kind of do it this way. So included in your staff report and shown here on the overhead are some of the policy area concepts that staff is proposing to explore as we go through this update process. We have already provided this information at one meeting to the various water districts. We are planning to have a second and third follow-up meeting where we go into more detail and get some of their thoughts, and we begin to collectively work on what may or may not be appropriate for the valley. So again, we are planning on looking at the various policies related to water well permitting. How is that processed? How do we manage that data? We are going to look at policies related to new public water supplies, the consolidation of our existing small water systems. Again, we're going to go through an extensive coordination process with the water districts and the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. We will have to include various policies and requirements to ensure that the general plan and both the GSP conform to one another and are consistent. Staff is going to explore what type of policies need to be included on water availability that will be supplied for new development. We do have an existing population that is growing, and we will have to make sure that there is housing available for that population, and then the other services and industries and other developments that need to support that population. Policies on water availability for the expansion or modification of our existing developments. Again, those are two separate questions. We need to make sure that we have an understanding and our general plan addresses what we're doing with new uses that are proposed that will come before your commission and before the board. But then what else are we doing on existing developments? Should we do more? Should things need to be done on those uses that are already in place? As we presented in our very first meeting, SB 1000, it's the mandatory environmental justice policy, which must focus on disadvantaged communities. We need to help ensure that our disadvantaged communities have appropriate infrastructure in place, which includes water as one of the key components. What are we doing and what policies do we have in place to help make sure that those existing disadvantaged communities will continue to have water, will have their facilities upgraded to a level that is necessary to help sustain that population in those locations. Allowance for alternative uses for properties that have limited water availability. Again, water is transferable. How and where and why, and those are all very site-specific, unique circumstances. So we plan on looking at trying to address the global perspective of how water can and cannot be moved. But there are some areas where it can't be moved, and there's no way to get water in and out of it, and what are we doing in those areas? What kind of policies are in place there? Do they need to be different than policies in other portions of the county? We intend to look at that as well. Policies that support for new water markets, for water transfers and banking. Again, the Tehachapi specific plan is one example of that. There is a thought that maybe we can have water transferred from one district to another. That may work, that may not work. Those are part of the discussions that county staff will be having with the various water districts. Is that something that can be done? Can it be tracked? Can it be managed? Can we have a system where a property owner may not have any intent on developing their land, but they may be able to put some sort of easement on their land or some sort of restriction on their land that then allows a different property owner the ability to develop? All those are concepts that we are looking to see if they would work in Kern County. And will be included in the general plan, which ultimately can and will be incorporated into the ground sustainability plans. But again, the purpose is to have a policy document that helps lay the foundation for which some of those plans can be based, so that when the various water districts and specifically the groundwater agencies are developing their plans, they're starting with at least some sort of basis by which they can look at. Annexations, we have to look at specific policies related to annexations, where water is going to be provided, things along those lines. Are there any ways that we can streamline private water treatment? Are there any area-specific policies? Again, we kind of touched base on this one, but examples for areas that may or may not have water availability due to its geography and things along those lines. Again, as I mentioned for this general plan update, staff is proposing to work directly with all our water districts and the various stakeholders to evaluate these concepts. These are some of staff's initial thoughts. They may or may not work, but we're going to be getting together this next month and continuing moving forward to see what type of recommendations we can agree would be the best fit for the County of Kern, and then hopefully incorporate those into the general plan for your commission's consideration. So in conclusion, I also wanted to inform your commission that Mr. Matt Towery, the owner of Towery Homes and the president of the Kern County Home Builders Association, is here tonight. And he would like to provide your commission with some thoughts relating and regarding housing, home building in California, and then Kern County specifically. So with that, the staff recommendation tonight is that after you hear from our three presenters, your commission, 1, take testimony, 2, you receive and file this letter, and 3, you provide any comments to staff. With that, that concludes my portion of the presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions your commission may have.
Any questions by commissioners at this point? Okay, let's proceed with the first speaker, Mr. Towery.
I'd be Mr. Creel.
Okay, Mr. Creel. Why don't you introduce the speakers and then
Okay.
we'll go.
And then if the clerk could turn on the computer this time so I can pull up Mr. Curtis Creel's PowerPoint presentation.
Mr. Creel, could you spell your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Curtis Creel, C-U-R-T-I-S, C-R-E-E-L. I'm the general manager for the Kern County Water Agency. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about, and it's an important part of what makes our community what it is today. The question that's before that at least I'm trying to address is to take a step back and talk about the water management within Kern County. But in order to talk to tell that story, I really have to take a look at the entire state of California. And within California, we have what we would refer to as a spatial and temporal distribution problem. Most of the water that falls within the state falls within the top third part of the state. Northern California receives the vast majority of water supply for the state of California. And yet, most of the population areas and the uses for water fall within the bottom two-thirds of the state, along the coastline as well as the Great Central Valley. In addition to that, we have our monsoon season, and then we have followed by a period of drought. So we have a problem with getting the water from where it falls to where it's used, as well as the fact that water a lot of times doesn't fall when it is mostly needed for human uses. When you look at how water is used within the state of California, the vast majority that's on the North Coast and through the Northern California is utilized for environmental purposes. A lot of times we hear the statistic that 80% of the water is used for agriculture. That's not entirely correct. 80% of the developed water supply that's used for human uses would be for agriculture, but the vast majority of water is actually used for environmental purposes. It provides for outflow to the ocean, it provides for in-stream flows for fishery needs and habitat improvements. Human uses does not represent the vast majority of water supplies that are developed within Kern or within California. Now, stepping back to that distribution and temporal problem that I was talking about, the state of California, in its wisdom, envisioned a system of aqueducts and storage projects located throughout the state. And that was referred to as the Central Valley Project. That was a state envisioned plan. Unfortunately, the state of California did not have the financial means to develop that back in the late 20s and early 30s. The federal government stepped in and was at that time looking for shovel-ready projects, and they found that the Central Valley Project was a good place to start. Today, the modern Central Valley Project provides water supplies for Northern California and the San Joaquin Valley, and even serves water down into Kern County from the San Joaquin River. In the early 60s, Governor Brown wanted to complete the vision of the Central Valley Project and led to the construction and operation of what is known today as the State Water Project. State Water Project primarily serves municipal purposes in the Bay Area and Southern California, but also provides State Water Project to Kern County here. And in fact, Kern County Water Agency is the second largest State Water Project contractor for those supplies. So looking at Kern County's supply of water, and recognizing that there's both Central Valley Project and State Water Project supplies that make up that mix, the vast majority of the water supplies that are used on the surface of the county are imported. They originate somewhere else in the state. Only about 40% of our water supplies that are generated on the surface are actually generated within our own watersheds within Kern County. If we factor in a missing component, which is the use of groundwater, that makes up a pretty significant portion of the water portfolio. In many years, that can be the vast majority or the single largest source of water supply that is utilized for various uses within the county. And Eric Averett will be talking a bit more about the challenges that are going to be facing water managers associated with groundwater development. In Kern County, as noted earlier, the uses of water and how water moves around is managed by a number of water districts. I've broken those out between those that primarily use Kern River supplies, those that receive Central Valley Project water supplies that are primarily over on the eastern side of the valley, and those supplies come in from the San Joaquin River through the Friant-Kern Canal. And finally, from the State Water Project, which provides a significant amount of water supplies to the vast majority of water districts within Kern County. So taking a step back from and I think this slide demonstrates very well another temporal problem that we have, which is drought periods that extend for multiple years. 2011 was a very wet year, and in fact, this year we're seeing the wettest year on record, which is providing needed relief to make up for the last 9 years of drought conditions. So what do we do when those surface supplies are not sufficient to meet the demands? And what's interesting here is this graphic takes us back to the early 70s. And one of the interesting points here is that demands for water supply within Kern County have not changed a whole lot over that 40-year period. They've stayed relatively constant. There's some ups and downs depending on specific conditions throughout those years. But you can see that the surface supplies represented by the different bars on that graphic do change dramatically from year to year based on what Mother Nature is able to provide us. So how do we deal with the difference between what is provided by Mother Nature on the surface and the need for water supply? That area that's filled in the pink area represents the use of groundwater within Kern County. And of course, when surface supplies exceed the amount of demand, then that water supply is available for recharge within the groundwater basin. Since the late 1980s, when we went through the last critically dry period at that time, and Kern County was facing a 0% allocation from the State Water Project, water managers and water districts have invested heavily in groundwater projects. And in fact, today, nearly every water district that is on the basin floor has some sort of water banking program. Water banking, very simple concept. Just like a bank, you put money in, you take money out when you need it. When you have a little extra money, you put it into the bank, you keep it there for safekeeping, then when you need to pull it out, you bring it out. Water banks work pretty much the same way. When you have extra water, you put it into the ground. When you need it, you pull it out. You don't pull out it more than what you put in. And all of these projects are designed in that manner so that they put in more water than what is actually extracted out of those programs. And in fact, Kern County has, over those years, invested over $300 million in the infrastructure to make this happen. And when you incorporate the water supplies that have actually been brought in and put into those banking projects, those projects represent over $500 million of investment that has helped to fuel the economy of Kern County. So I wanted to come back to this pie chart that shows the breakdown of surface supplies that are utilized within Kern County to make another point here. And again, nearly 60% of our water supply that originates on the surface originated someplace else, did not originate here in Kern County. The vast majority of our water supply is imported from someplace else. We have choices. We can contract, reduce our demands to the point that we are no longer importing those supplies and address the enormous impact that it would have on our economy and our local businesses and communities. Or we can invest in regional water management programs and statewide water management programs that will help to ensure that we are able to meet the water needs of our communities. The point here is that many of those supplies keep us connected to the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, which is a switching yard for water supplies throughout the state of California. And that is probably one of the points where you will start to see much more information being brought out about what the Kern County Water Agency, what other major water managers throughout the state of California, as well as the state of California itself, are trying to do to address issues within the Delta to ensure that we have adequate water supplies throughout California. At this point, I'm going to turn it over the presentation or the mic to my colleague, Eric Averett, and he'll talk more about SGMA. I guess if there are questions afterwards, we can come up.
Good evening. My name is Eric Averett. Last name is spelled A-V-E-R-E-T-T, and I'm the manager for the Rosedale Rio Bravo Water Storage District. I'm going to touch on the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. It was actually a series of 3 bills that were passed, and Curtis alluded to the banking industry or the banking and much of the work that's been done within Kern County to capture and store high flow water supplies when there's a surplus and store them for use or re-regulation when we're in periods of drought. And I like to use that analogy because I think it helps put some context to what the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, requires. At a very high level, it is very much like having a checking account. And in essence, what it does is it says we have to live within our means. And so Curtis referenced the $300 million of investment that Kern County has done and millions of acre feet of water that's been brought in. And that water's been available during periods of drought. However, Mr. Murphy mentioned that we are designated as critically overdrafted, and most of you are aware that unfortunately when your bank account sends you a notice that says you've overdrafted, that means your demand or your use of funds has exceeded the funds that are in the bank. And Kern County finds itself in that situation, along with many other counties and many other regions within the state. And so SGMA, in essence, says we must live within our means, and so we have to develop strategies and methods and how to do that. One of the unique features of SGMA, unlike many other states within the country, the state of California said, we're going to offer you at the local level the chance to address that. In fact, that was a key feature of the governor's signing message, that they place the responsibility of developing a solution to balance our budget, if you will, at the local level. So that represents a unique opportunity, but also a significant challenge. SGMA has a number of dates, and I wanted to touch on them. Some of them are looming really quickly. Some of them are a little bit out in the future, but all of them are part of the process. The first is what we call the formation of a groundwater sustainability agency. That is the agency that steps forward and accepts responsibility for a specific area and says, I will be responsible for balancing the water budget within this area or developing a plan. Within Kern County, we have a lot of local agencies that are participating in or that will be forming GSAs. The County of Kern is actually one of them. They're stepped forward and are looking at covering what we call or characterize as white areas or undistricted areas. We have to identify who is going to be the GSA for the basin, and the basin is within Kern County. It's the valley floor of Kern County by June 30 of 2017, so really just in the next few months. Unfortunately, we believe we will have 100% coverage, and that's very important. If we don't have all of the lands covered within the basin, then we risk going what's called probationary, which means that we get a little black mark and the state board would come in and have to work with us. The next deadline, which is actually the real one, is the time where we have to put in the groundwater sustainability plan. The plan is the roadmap. It's the document that sets the stage that says this is how we're going to balance our budget. We're going to develop new water supplies if we are overdrafted, or we maybe have to reduce demand. But it's the narrative that describes to the satisfaction of the state those steps that we will take in order to manage our basin sustainably. So now that we've established the GSA, which is the local agency that's responsible, and the GSP, that is the document that describes how we will do it, we can transition into what I would characterize as the Kern story. Kern County formed what was called the Kern Groundwater Authority actually before the legislation ever passed. We recognized that we were in the middle of a drought and we needed to take action to prevent some of the challenges and problems that we were seeing throughout the state: subsidence, water quality issues, groundwater level declines. And so the water interests within Kern County, including the County of Kern, got together and began having conversations and discussions about what can we do. Currently, that board is made up of elected officials, so the, elected officials from the boards of the various cities, community services districts, water districts of the County of Kern. We have 18 members. And the idea behind this organization is to preserve the concept of local control. Within Kern County, we have about 35 entities that could step forward and accept responsibility. And one of the requirements of this groundwater sustainability planning effort is that we are coordinated and that we all speak with one voice, which is quite a challenge when you've got so many diverse interests who are disconnected maybe within the county by different water supplies or different uses, whether it's urban versus an ag perspective. Excuse me. But the idea behind the authority is that it would act as a facilitating point or point of coordination for all of those interests, not to act upon them or to mandate that they do certain things, but to provide a venue where they could sit around the table, discuss different ideas and concepts, and then coordinate those. And so we have a unified picture within Kern County. The graphic that you see identifies those entities that have either currently stepped forward and accepted the responsibility for the GSAs. So those are the yellow circles. So we have the Kern River GSA and the Buena Vista GSA. They have been identified as what DWR calls exclusive, which means that they have sole responsibility for their planning areas. We have two that have stepped forward and filed, but they have been overlapped, and so they have some work to do to kind of make sure that their boundaries are aligned and that nobody else is looking at jurisdictional responsibility for those areas. And then the ones in the blue are anticipated, which means that they are either currently in the filing process or have notice of an intent to file. And all of those that have the red bar around them are members of the Kern Groundwater Authority and will be coordinating their plans with the Kern Groundwater Authority. The next slide shows the groundwater sustainability plan, and this is really the important point in this, this process. The groundwater sustainability plan is that document. DWR says that if you have more than one plan within the basin, you have to identify somebody who can speak for the basin. So DWR didn't want to talk to 32 different entities. They said we want to talk to one person within the basin who can tell us what's happening. So there's a single point of contact. And if you have multiple plans within the basin, they have to be coordinated so that the sum of the parts equal the whole. That 2 + 2 = 4, not 5 or 6 or 7 because of counting errors or other things. And so the picture that you see before you identifies the 3 GSPs that have at least at this point indicated they will have separate plans. Buena Vista has indicated they're going to have a plan by themselves. The Kern River GSA, which is a combination of the city of Bakersfield, Improvement District Number 4, and Kern Delta Water District, are going to do a plan for their area, and they actually represent the majority of the urbanized Bakersfield area. And then the Kern Groundwater Authority GSP will be basically the remainder of the basin. But we all have to coordinate, so there's a common set of assumptions within all of the plans. Sustainability means managing to prevent undesirable results. That's the theme behind what DWR is looking for, that we manage our basin, not just to balance the checkbook as I've described. It includes a much greater or broader scope. It includes things such as water quality and subsidence. But if you notice on the slide, I've highlighted in red the concept of chronic lowering of groundwater levels. All of the rest of those are really symptoms of that endemic problem of I don't have enough water, I'm overdrafting the basin, the water table is drawing down, I'm experiencing subsidence, which is a symptom of lowering water levels, I'm experiencing water quality issues. All of those are symptoms of chronic lowering of water levels. And unfortunately, within Kern County, we've been experiencing that for a number of years, primarily because of the drought. One of the unique features of this is that for the first time in California, groundwater will be regulated. Curtis's slide showed you how much groundwater we use within Kern County. Kern County has an annual average demand of about 2.4 million acre feet. And unfortunately, the surface supplies that we have available to us don't quite meet that. This represents new challenges, not just for those of us in the agricultural water community, but also for within the urban community, because we recognize that many of our urban centers don't have contracted water supplies. They're wholly dependent upon groundwater. So there's a steep learning curve for some of the cities within the county as they try and get their arms around what does this mean for them and how are they going to develop water supplies. Potential limits on pumping will be a reality and will actually affect land use values, and we're starting to see that already. Undeveloped land with overlying rights may have further restrictions on their development because of a lack of water supply. So these are significant challenges that these GSPs will have to identify and address, and certainly will be coordinated with land use planning efforts through the general plan update. So some of the significant challenges ahead, I've alluded to some of them in the prior slide, but I'll just touch on a couple of others. This idea of administrative adjudication, we have to agree. We all share this common budget, if you will, and we have to identify how much we can use and somehow develop a plan that will allow us to live within that budget. There's a number of policy issues. Craig mentioned some of them. They certainly relate to land use planning. As we as water districts manage our water supplies, we for the first time will have to figure out how are we going to manage these supplies but yet work with the county and cities and others who have land use planning needs and have zoning and all of the things that again, from a water district perspective, we've never gotten involved in. And I think it would be fair to say that the land use planning will have to certainly work closely with the water districts to ensure that there's a water supply available for the development that you would consider. Water pricing, just a footnote, this is one of the things that I think represents one of the greatest challenges, especially within Kern County. The cost of pumping groundwater can be anywhere from $40 an acre foot to $100 an acre foot. An acre foot is about the amount of water a single home would use in a year. Those days are gone. The cost of water is going to increase significantly because we've introduced market forces for the first time. It used to be supply was unlimited, and so therefore, demand had really no balancing, and so for the first time, we'll have market forces that will manage or certainly establish new pricing points, which is, again, a learning curve for most of us. I'll move through these fairly quickly. I like to call these the good, the bad, and the ugly. Within Kern County, the good is that we do have the opportunity to develop local solutions. And that means that we have water district managers, land use planning agency professionals, people who are going to be looking at this and coming up with very creative ways to kind of navigate this process. And so we do think that we have some unique opportunities. Curtis touched on, you know, the switch yard, if you will, of water within California. The Delta certainly is that, but I would also argue that Kern County is unique in that we have the confluence of 3 major water systems right here in our backyard, and we certainly are doing our best to manage those. The bad is we have to acknowledge that currently there's insufficient water to meet the current demands. And what that means is that there will be a reduction or a curtailment in demand, which has an economic consequence, or we will have to develop new supplies. And as water district managers, our job is to make sure that there's sufficient water supplies for the users that we represent. And that certainly will be our first goal and objective. But then we also have to acknowledge the reality that in some cases there may not be enough water for a particular area, and they will have a different approach. The ugly is economic impacts will be real. This is not my favorite slide. Actually, the last one is my least favorite slide, but this sets the stage because I think it's important that policy folks like yourself understand the level of the issue or the significance of the issue. I don't think anyone would debate or argue with me that we're looking at between a 15 to 20% reduction in irrigated acreage, not just within Kern, but through much of the Central Valley. When you look at the map that DWR has prepared that identifies the critically overdrafted basins, the vast majority of them, unfortunately, are in the Central Valley, our economic hub. Absent some policy shifts within the state that restores the water supply that we've lost as a result of environmental restrictions, we're going to be looking at reductions in irrigated agriculture. This last slide, one of these days I'll figure out how to end on a high note or some positive thing. I need to maybe develop a new slide. But this was an independent economic analysis that looked at Kern County, and it said if Sigma was imposed today, we didn't have a 20-year window to develop our plan and kind of achieve sustainability. That's the good news, by the way. I guess maybe I could end on this. We do have 20 years within which to develop our plans, and so it's not like overnight we have to cut the budget, develop new supplies or increase or reduce demands. We have a 20-year window within which to implement these solutions, and that gives us time and adaptive management strategies to do that. But this slide looks at what would happen within Kern County if tomorrow Sigma was fully implemented and we had to balance our budget, and we lost, if you will, 182,000 acres of irrigated ag. And these economic numbers are staggering, frankly, for the county. When you look at these, I think it highlights how dependent we are or how much value we have within our agricultural sector. But it also identifies not just how many lost jobs, but taxable income, the overall economic value of this sector. And so our goal and our job for the next 2 years while we develop the plans is to identify ways and strategies that prevent these types of numbers from becoming a reality. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks and welcome any questions.
Okay, and then our last presenter today is Mr. Matt Towery.
Good evening. My name is Matt Towery, Towery, with Towery Homes and president of the Home Building Association of Kern County. Tonight I have a little overview of what's happening in home building in Bakersfield in the Kern County area. Thanks for taking the time tonight. Our industry has become a battlefield of regulations and restrictions. These were probably meant for good, but home ownership as a result grows more difficult for the middle class to obtain every year. California is in a housing crisis, and Bakersfield and Kern County is falling close behind because it's becoming the most unaffordable place to live. California as a whole cannot find a suitable and affordable place to live. California ranks 49th out of 50 states in housing units per capita, and it ranks dead last among states in its ability to deliver an affordable home to prospective first-time purchasers. This is obviously alarming, but the real significance is this: homeownership is the #1 factor of a thriving and sustainable middle class. Typically, it was the surefire investment of ordinary people to have for financial stability and for a source of retirement. We keep hearing that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. That is absolutely true in California. A thriving middle class has been the backbone of this country for years. However, we are losing the middle class. Our state population will continue to decline. The middle class is the heart of our economy. It is the heart of Bakersfield and Kern County. I prepared this a few weeks ago for the water symposium that took place, and I found some numbers that were kind of startling. In 1992, Bakersfield pulled about 1,400 single-family home permits, and we had a population of 186,000 people. By 1999, 2,300 building permits were pulled. We had about 231,000 people. At that time, there were 69 builders. There was only one national builder, and they were 15th place in the 69. By 2006, we had about 5,000 permits, and that, of course, was insanity, and it all crashed. As a result, by 2011, I think we pulled 492 permits, which was lower than anything on record from before World War II. Finally, last year, 1,500 permits were pulled, but our population is 377,000, so we are twice what we were in 1992, building the same amount of homes. Something's wrong, and why has this happened? Regulations and fees. After the crash of 2007, costs started to rise and not fall. Since 2008, just as an example, traffic impact fees have doubled. I had a subdivision that in 2008, we built 27 homes in the Northeast. They were very price sensitive. We started at $169,000. The traffic impact fees were raised. That added $7,000 to the home, another $3,000 from state requirements. And with that $10,000, our sales dropped from 27 to 4. So the city and the county getting the traffic impact fees had $190,000 the year before, and the next year they had 52. Energy requirements have doubled in their overall efficiency requirements, but the curve flattens so much that the additional costs won't be saved during a 30-year mortgage. Fire sprinklers have become mandatory on all homes. There is now a greater risk of water damage from these than you had from potential fire damage. Sprinklers are not designed to save lives, just structures. Sewer connection fees have increased, habitat fees are increasing, and we're getting another round of fees and regulations from the state, solar requirements and things like that. All told, there has been approximately $30,000 that have been added to the cost of a 1,600 square foot home. Since 2008, a home of that size that sells for $250,000 now should sell for $220,000. It is estimated that every $1,000 a home increases in price, 479 buyers are priced out of the market. Since the $30,000 has been added to the price of the home, 14,370 people are priced out of the market. Many families are grouping together. We are seeing multiple extended families collectively trying to buy and move into one home. And as a note, only 10% of the people of Greater Bakersfield can afford a home over $300,000. And with the land prices and all that's going on along with these fees, that number is getting more and more difficult to hit. We've had new codes that have been added to this. The new landscape codes because of the drought. These requirements changed. We were delayed 4 months in building any homes because nobody knew what the guidelines exactly were and the calculations were difficult to navigate. For example, a 1,600 square foot home on a 6,000 square foot lot can have a grass area of 20 by 10, and it can't be any closer than 10 feet from the concrete. So what we see a lot of bark and very few plants. That's just the way things are going. Consumers in our area have not seen any real wage growth, but the land development and home building costs have grown exponentially. Even with continued historically low interest rates, new homes are more difficult to buy now than they were in 1992. With the oil downturn, this has hurt our economy from a middle income wage scenario. Doesn't matter what it is, all things, whether it be our intellect or our communities, grow and recede. Nothing stays the same. We need more industry for better job growth and better wages. Affordability of homes will always be a factor. We will not see the boom that we had in 2003 to 2007, thank goodness, in our lifetime again, but working within the stifling restraints of California, Bakersfield and Kern County need a common sense approach to growth, knowing that we have to grow and do it affordably for our community to thrive. If not, we will recede into the shell of what Bakersfield could and should have been. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Towery. And I guess that completes staff's presentation.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So that'll bring us to the general plan update workshop number 4, an overview of the Metropolitan Bakersfield Land Use Metropolitan Plan. And we're going to take testimony tonight, and at the end of the meeting, we will be receiving, it's being recorded, and we'll be submitting that for file and presenting it to the plan, the people putting the plan together, staff, and moving forward with the general plan amendment that we're working on. So we want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I need to ask the commissioners if they've got any questions of the 3 speakers we had. Okay. And with that, I'll open the workshop meeting and ask the speakers to come forward on an individual basis and state your name for the record and spell it. And then we'll move forward with testimony that can be put into the record. First speaker, please.
Buenas noches. Mi nombre es José Ramón Colado. Vengo representando a la comunidad de Deleno.
Oh, hold up just a second till we get the interpreter, and we will get your name and spell it.
¿Listo? Otra vez, mi nombre es José Ramón Colado. Vengo representando a la ciudad, a la comunidad de Deleno, California.
Again, my name is Jesus
José Ramón Colado.
José Ramón Colado. I'm here representing the community of Delano,
Específicamente en la calle Lytle Avenue.
specifically the Lido Avenue,
entre Coney Line y Cecil Avenue.
between County Line and Cecil Avenue.
He estado viviendo, yo personalmente, ahorita estamos aquí varios de la misma calle que yo vengo aquí a hablar acerca
I
de.
have been living there personally, and a lot of people who live on my same block are here with me tonight.
Yo he estado viviendo ahí por 15 años, algunas otras personas menos, otros más.
I've been living there for 15 years. Other people more time, other people less time.
En la calle que nosotros vivimos no es una calle desarrollada por el condado.
On the street that I live on, it's not a street that has been developed by the county.
Como se puede saber, nosotros somos familias de trabajadores,
As you know, we are working families.
pagamos nuestros impuestos
We pay our
todos los
taxes
años.
every year.
Nunca hemos encontrado alguna ayuda de ustedes para poder arreglar nuestra calle.
Have never sought your help in order to fix our street.
Nosotros lo hemos arreglado, nosotros la comunidad nos hemos juntado todos los años para arreglar esa calle.
Us, the community, we have all gone together every year to fix the streets.
Nuestros hijos van a la escuela
Our
como todas las familias.
children attend schools like every other family.
La mayoría de nosotros trabajamos en el field, trabajamos muy temprano, llegamos tarde.
The majority of us are field workers. We go to work very early and return very late.
Nuestros hijos a veces pueden agarrar raite de alguna persona, la mayoría de las veces no.
Our children sometimes can get a ride from people. The majority of the time they cannot.
A veces tienen que caminar 20 minutos, 15 minutos, depende de la distancia que tengan que caminar, que es como una milla más o menos.
Sometimes they have to walk 20 minutes, 15 minutes, about a mile more or less.
Hace como 13 años venimos a pedir la misma ayuda,
About
se nos negó.
13 years ago, we came and requested the same help. It was denied.
Esta vez ya no nos podemos quedar callados, ustedes tienen que escucharnos.
This time we cannot remain silent. You must listen to us.
Somos vecinos de la prisión estatal de Delano en el norte de la Cecil Avenue.
We are neighboring the state prison of Delano on the northern side of Cecil Avenue.
Tenemos un cerco al oeste de nosotros.
There's
La
a fence to our west.
propiedad adentro de la prisión tiene un camino bastante diferente al de nosotros,
The property within the prison has a road a lot different than ours,
completamente pavimentado,
completely paved.
que nosotros no podemos usar.
We cannot use it.
Venimos aquí todos nosotros a pedir a ustedes
We
que
are
por
all
favor
here to request of you that please
nos ayuden a arreglar nuestro camino.
help us fix our road.
Necesitamos el camino,
We need the road.
necesitamos luz pública,
We need public lighting.
necesitamos agua pública para en caso de incendios que no tenemos.
We need public water in case there's a fire, which we do not have.
Tenemos nosotros los padres temor de nuestros hijos cuando van y vienen de la escuela por animales salvajes, coyotes, serpientes, etc.
Our parents, we are fearful of our children's safety when they walk to school, serpents, coyotes, etc.
Y les pedimos que por favor seamos escuchados.
And we ask that we are heard.
Luego lo repetir, somos personas que tenemos nuestra propiedad pagando impuestos todos los años
I repeat myself, we are property owners, we have paid taxes every year.
y nunca hemos tenido una sola ayuda del
We have
condado para arreglar esto.
Never received any help from the county to fix this.
Gracias por escucharme.
Thank you for hearing me.
I have a question.
Tengo una pregunta.
The question is this within the county's jurisdictional boundary or the city of Delano boundary?
Esto es parte del condado de Kern.
This is part of Kern County.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying
Gracias.
that.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Español, ¿verdad? Sí, okay.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Juan Carlos Martín del Campo.
Good afternoon. My name is Juan Carlos Martín del Campo.
También estoy hablando en representación de la misma comunidad.
I'm also here in representation of the same community.
Como mi compañero expuso,
Like my companion just exposed,
son muchas cosas de las cuales estamos necesitados en esa comunidad.
we are in need of many things in that community.
Tenemos problemas con el correo.
We are having problems with the mail.
Todos los buzones no pueden estar individualmente en la propiedad.
Okay.
No están individualmente en
Okay.
cada propiedad.
The mailboxes are not individually located at each property.
tienen que estar en un solo lugar afuera en la calle Cecil
In one place on Cecil Street
para todas las direcciones de
For-
esa calle.
all the addresses on that street.
La mayor parte del tiempo, muchas veces el correo ha sido robado.
The majority of the time, the mail is stolen.
La mayoría de nosotros tenemos cajas o P.O. Box en el correo.
The majority of us have P.O. boxes to receive our mail.
En esa calle hay un problema muy grande,
There is a big problem on that street.
que no hay drenaje pluvial o de
There's
lluvias.
no drainage pipe for the storm drains.
Durante el tiempo del invierno,
During the winter time,
todo el agua que corre por la calle County Line
all the water that runs down County Line Road
cruza por todo ese terreno,
crosses those properties.
inundando muchas de las propiedades y la calle.
Floods the street and a lot of the properties.
Personalmente, he mirado niños caminando entre los charcos de agua porque no hay
Personally,
ningún lugar
I
para
have
poder caminar.
Seen a lot of children walking within the mud, the standing water because there's no other place to walk.
Quisiéramos, por favor, si nos pudieran ayudar
We would like for you to please help us
en hacer banquetas
so we can have sidewalks,
para que los niños puedan caminar a tomar sus bases en la escuela.
so the children can walk to their bus stops to go to school.
Yo sé que son muchas cosas las que se necesitan,
I know there's a lot of needs,
pero hay cosas que son prioritarias,
but some of those things are priorities,
como sería el camino,
like the road,
banquetas,
sidewalks,
lo que viene siendo los hidrantes para los bomberos en caso de
the
emergencia.
fire hydrants for the firemen in case there's an emergency or a fire.
Muchas veces el camino se tiene que transitar a una velocidad mínima por la condición en la que se encuentra.
A lot of times you must drive at a minimal speed due to the road conditions.
Para vehículos de emergencia como ambulancias, bomberos, policía,
For emergency vehicles like police, firemen,
ambulancias,
ambulances,
es más tardado poder reaccionar en caso de una
it's
emergencia.
harder to react during an emergency.
Entonces, les suplicamos, por favor,
So we request that you please,
si pueden escuchar nuestra propuesta y tomarla en cuenta, se los agradeceríamos
you can
muy
listen to our
grandemente.
proposal and take it into consideration. We would greatly appreciate it.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Would you hold your applause, please? And I forgot to mention that we're going to be limiting the speakers to 3 minutes of testimony.
Los van a limitar a 3 minutos para que den su declaración.
Buenas tardes, yo soy Estela Pérez,
Good afternoon. My name is Estela Perez.
vengo también de la misma calle de Lairo Avenue en Delano.
I come from the same street in Delano, Lido Avenue.
Y yo también nomás quiero adherir una cosa más a lo mismo que dijeron mis vecinos,
I would like to add one more thing to what my neighbors have already said.
porque es por la seguridad de nuestros niños que a veces los de la
Okay.
prisión,
It's due to our children's safety. Sometimes
los prisioneros de
the
la prisión,
prisoners, the inmates from the prison,
ellos salen así como una de aquí a la puerta. de
they go
distancia.
out from like here to the door distance.
And they cortan los árboles y
They
cortan el
cut
jardín.
trees and mow lawns, the
Y
garden.
no sé si se puede hacer una barda o decirles
I
que no estén tan cerca de nuestras
Do not know if
casas.
you can build a wall or a fence or tell them not to come so close to our homes.
Y pues nada más es una adición a todos los demás
That was just in
Cosas.
addition to everything else that was requested
de mis vecinos.
by my neighbors.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
We have a comments by Commissioner Poole.
Sorry. I just wanted to make sure staff is getting the contact information for these folks so that we can get back to them on their concerns and comments, and also, I think, to some extent, direct them to other city and county agencies that might be able to help with some of these things that are not within the scope of the general plan.
Okay? And when you come forward and you say your name, we would like for you to spell your name so we get into the record correctly.
Good evening. My name is Yadira Rodriguez, RODRIGUZ. I am a resident of Lamont and part of the Boys and Girls Club of Lamont. Tonight we are speaking on behalf of housing and water elements for the general plan. I believe affordable housing is a necessary for the residents of Lamont. The cost of living can be hard for many people because many of the residents of Lamont work in the fields and agriculture. Many families are forced to live with 2 or more families to make ends meet. And having affordable housing can help families in Lamont that are in the situation not to label as homeless yet have a home of their own. This ensures that families to live in a nice home and be near areas to shop and go to school. I urge you to take into consideration by including the community of Lamont in the general plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Jesus Moreno, Moreno. I am a resident of Lamont and part of the Boys and Girls Club. This evening we are considering the element of housing and water. I would like to speak about affordable housing in my community. In the past week or so, we have been speaking about ways to have options in Lamont for more housing. We drove around town to find potential areas for affordable housing. We found about 4 to 5 areas where housing can be placed within the town. Some are large half-blocked areas that have been abandoned for many decades. One in particular area we targeted is on the corner of San Diego Street and Hall Street, right next to the David Head Center and the San Diego Park in Lamont. This location is ideal for families and to have access to schools, businesses, and recreation. When considering the general plan element of housings, please think of the community of Lamont because there is great need for affordable housing for hardworking parents and their family. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Austin Hall, spelled Hall. I am the Central Valley Policy Manager for California Walks, a statewide pedestrian safety advocacy nonprofit, and I wanted to speak about how the 2 elements tonight in particular relate to walkability and pedestrian safety, water and housing. I want to speak about the water element, which was a little bit of conflicting information in the notice for this meeting where the staff report made no mention of this, but in the newsletter that went out, there was mention that the water element would also include flood management. And we believe that it is imperative for the general plan to cover flood management, especially considering the negative impact that flooding had this last season on the community of Lamont and on the ability of students to walk to Mountain View Middle School. This has been an issue that has been reoccurring in that area in the early 80s, in the late 90s, or other instances of flooding, and to see flooding not be included in the staff report around this water element and not included in these presentations is concerning. On behalf of my organization, I would like to encourage that this general plan and the water element for this plan take into account this element to ensure more walkable environment for those who live in this community. In addition, I would just like to echo the sentiments of the people who preceded me that the housing element should continue to incorporate walkability concerns, as well as locating quality, affordable, and other housing within walking distance of jobs, commerce, and community resources, and that housing should also take into account the possibility of flooding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Dobbin, Dobbin spelled Dobbin, and I am Regional Water Management Coordinator for Community Water Center, and I'm here to give some suggestions for the water element on behalf of my organization. First of all, I would like to say that we support the inclusion of a water element in the general plan. It is extremely important for not only all of California, but especially here in the Central Valley, and we look forward to the opportunity to integrate land use and water through this element. SB 1263 passed last year allows the state board to deny or permit new water systems that based on their ability to be sustainable long-term in their economies of scale. In line with that policy, we think the general plan should encourage connections for new developments and really limit or exclude the possibility of permitting new unsustainable water systems. There should be a ban on new non-water system wells within public water system boundaries. The water element should expressly promote and discuss groundwater recharge, including its potential to benefit disadvantaged communities through water quality and quantity. We applaud the concept included in the staff report of the county supporting the development of drought planning and water contingency plans. And we would like to see the county to play an active role in that type of planning for small systems and self-suppliers who are not covered by the urban water management plans where that type of drought planning occurs. Finally, well, second to last, the Tulare Lake Basin Disadvantaged Community Study completed in 2014 provides 60 recommendations, some of which are targeted to counties, the 4 county basins in the Tulare Lake Basin. And I have the executive summary with the list of recommendations here to present to the commission, and we recommend that all of those county targeted recommendations be included in the water element. And finally, it should be an explicit and documented goal of the water element to promote the human right to water for safe, clean, and affordable drinking water in Kern County. Thank you.
Could you hand your document to the clerk, please? Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Sophie Mulholland. I'm the president of Sequoia Riverlands Trust, which is your local conservation organization. One of the things that wasn't mentioned is that SGMA does require that there's a huge stakeholder participation, and it specifically requires conservation inclusion in that. And as your local land trust, which we work here in Kern County with oil, solar companies, ranchers, farmers, the county, we just want you to know that we're here not only for SGMA, but also for the general plan to work with you so that our urban areas are reflective also of the areas that we want to conserve and preserve. And we want to bring forward some of the ideas that we've come up with that are very beneficial to the farmers. And we're working with that in several counties in terms of the retired land that they're going to be required to do grassland implementation, which cuts down on the air quality, which obviously for Bakersfield is pretty important. And we're here to try to work with them with some of the tests and the plots that we're doing. So I hope you will continue to engage us and know that we are here to make Kern County the best that it can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. My name is Adam Livingston. I'm Director of Planning and Policy at Sequoia Riverlands Trust. And in terms of both the water and housing elements, I wanted to call the Commission's attention to the relationship between water demand and development patterns. There are a number of studies showing that more compact development patterns are associated with lower per capita water use, lower per capita infrastructure costs in terms of water delivery, and often more affordable housing. So I think part of the solution, certainly not the whole solution, but part of the solution is directing a higher proportion of new development into existing communities in more dense forms than the traditional large lot single family home. And more broadly, I think we need to basically we need to change what housing looks like and bring it in line with the resources that are available to us. I mean, it's whether we like it or not, we live in California, we're not in New York or Ohio. Water is a finite resource. So we need to think about that in terms of, how big the average lot is. We need to think about that in terms of things like landscaping requirements. It doesn't necessarily make sense for everyone to have a large green lawn. I think I definitely understand the concerns raised about regulation as to landscaping, but I think we do need to bring our idea of what housing looks like in line with the resources that are available to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Well, you finally got back to
Yeah,
us.
I finally got here.
Good girl. Can you give us your name and spell your name for us?
It's Jan Gary, Gary.
Thank you.
And I'm here because I would like something either added to an ordinance or a new ordinance regarding residential neighborhoods. And I live in a type A, R1, and this has to do with neighborhood parking ordinance for that. And the way I've worded it is off-street parking may not be located in a front yard for single-family dwellings that have available a paved street, a concrete driveway, and most of the homes have a garage. And so what's happening in our neighborhood and several neighborhoods is that people are disregarding the street and parking in-op cars on the front lawn. Is just really lowering property values, and I don't think that's fair to the people who have spent their money for years paying for a home. So I would like that added or a new ordinance there, and I have given a copy of this to Lorelei Oviatt and Mr. Murphy already. The second thing I've noticed is that there are a lot of areas that are being used as dumping sites. And I want to read you what I wrote here so I don't forget anything. And I'm with Citizens for a New Oildale. Have been working with them for 13 years now. So anyway, this is what we feel. It's come to our attention that certain areas of Oildale are being used for dumping sites. One was behind Vaughn's on North Chester Avenue, where mattresses were the main issue. It was finally fenced off and closed off, which it is right now. There are several alleys in Oildale area that have to be cleaned all the time, and this is an expense to the county. One is the alley behind Trout's, and there are garages there, and people, rather than use the two-item pickup that's free, once a month, they don't, and I don't know why that is. The alley between China Grade Loop and Portal Street is not really even needed, and that's the one that concerns me because it's behind my fence, and I'm requesting that it be closed off because there are no garages, and there's maybe 3 vehicles that might use that in a day, and their house is like 1 block from Manor Street, so it just doesn't seem necessary. And so what's happened is when I notice a big dumping of trash, and a lot of it's furniture too, I go out there now and I go through it, and I have found a lot of unopened mail. So I've called the sheriff's department, and they have picked some of it up. Then the next maybe a week and a half, there's more, so I go out there. And I've taken a lot of that unopened mail to the post office because some of it was bills from banks or whatever, and a lot of it wasn't even from our neighborhood. I mean, it was from Rosedale area, and the deputy who came out said, well, this is from all over the place. So I imagine it has something to do with those people who are stealing mail. So that's just not a good thing. Anyhow, those are my 2 things. The ordinance to keep cars off of the front lawns because it does lower the value of the property. And when people try to sell a home or anything, it's just not good. And the other thing is about the alleys that we really don't seem to need. And you all know our country's changing, our state is changing, people are changing, and they just kind of do what they want a lot of times. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gary. Next speaker, please. State your name for the record. Do you need an interpreter?
No, I'm right.
Okay.
My name is Mario A. Garcia.
Okay, and can you spell that?
Mario. We are a group from Lamont.
Garcia?
Garcia. From Padres Socios. We are here to speak out for the issue we have in Lamont. The water is contaminated. We try to get filters for the schools, and we tested the water, and it's high level with 1 to 3 TP pesticides. They don't have like a program to test the waters in schools, and we're trying to get better water, drinking water in the area of all the schools in Lamont. And the water smells, it have an odor in it, and we don't know what to do. We're trying to fix this problem, but they just give us the turnaround. And we need your guys' help to investigate the water system in Lamont.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Crystal Garcia. I wanted to talk about our water. Our water is not safe for our school. People have talked about our water. They said that once they drink their water, their stomach starts to hurt and they get rashes. And they said the water smells bad and it doesn't really taste good. It tastes really weird. Even I have tried the water and I have gone sick, and other people had gone sick too for that water that we drink in our school.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you for your testimony.
And we need filters.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Leal, last name Leal. I work with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability.
Alicia, reset.
And part of the communities we work in is areas like Lamont, Rexland Acres, Wheat Patch, areas that on a day-to-day basis they only have access to contaminated water, which is why we're here proposing policies, strong policies that will ensure that community has access to clean water. So as the county approaches the water element, it's important to incorporate strong policies that will protect disadvantaged communities from health hazards due to oil refineries, pesticides, dairies, and the over-extraction of our shared groundwater resources. Residents want strong water policies and regulations to assure clean, reliable, and affordable drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater services in existing communities. As well, we recommend that the water element include mandatory requirements ensuring that the drinking water needs of existing disadvantaged communities are met before new developments are permitted within the county. New development should not come at the expense of existing communities that do not presently have access to sustainable, clean, and affordable drinking water. The same can be said with respect to the access to wastewater services. As many communities in Kern County have failing septic systems, and there is very limited funding at the local or state levels to address the issue with residents that cannot afford the cost of repairing or replacing the system. And for this, the water element should address both wastewater consolidation and repair for replacement of failing systems. And aside from this, we would like for the document to also incorporate the analysis of the underserved, disadvantaged, unincorporated communities contained in Chapter 7 in the 2016 Housing Element Update. And since I have 52 seconds, I would also like to address the question in regards to the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan. And I think this could be maybe an answer question tonight by Craig. I know that there was discussion in regards to not moving forward with the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan. So I want to make sure that in regards to your talks with the city and the county, to ensure that there's clear language in regards to the unincorporated communities included in the Metro Bakersfield General Plan, as many of those communities in the Metro Bakersfield General Plan are the communities we work in, which is Rexland and those communities that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Oh, go ahead.
Let me submit the recommendation.
Bring it up to the clerk.
We also emailed it, so.
Okay. Next speaker, please. State your name for the record and spell it.
Hi, I'm Mike Claiborne. I'm an attorney with Leadership Council, and thank you to the commission for giving me a few minutes to speak, specifically on Sigma and its inclusion. Well, it's the inclusion of Sigma and into the water element. I just have a few points. I think I can go through them pretty quickly. First, we think that this is an opportunity in producing the water element to include or ensure that disadvantaged communities are included in the process of developing GSPs, and within GSAs, these are the most, these residents are the most in need of sustainable groundwater for drinking water purposes, and I think that the only way to ensure that they're provided with that sustainable drinking water is that they be included in the process of creating GSPs. Second, and that kind of ties in, I think when we talk to residents, very few know about Sigma or that GSPs are being developed right now. So in order to incorporate disadvantaged communities and residents into the process, more outreach and education has to be done. We think that this is a good opportunity to ensure that outreach is done. Third, we think that the water element should acknowledge that groundwater sustainability also implies sustainability of quality groundwater so that it can meet drinking water requirements. And then fourth, we think that mandatory metering is going to be a requirement under Sigma. I think that's the only way to ensure that groundwater is actually used sustainably. And then finally, not on Sigma, on kind of a remaining issue, in the staff report, it mentioned residential caps under the Greater Tehachapi Area Plan. My worry on the residential caps, and I do think it can be written in a way to avoid this concern, is that it will prevent the construction of affordable housing and potentially conflict with the housing element. We think that that result should be avoided. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please. State your name for the record and spell it.
Good evening. My name is Gustavo Aguirre, Aguirre. And I just want to mention that my organization, Center of Risk Poverty and Environment, invited the residents from Delano, and we will be more than happy to help. If you can bring some support to them, we can help coordinate those efforts. And the staff have my information, my contact already. In regards to the comments, I think on the water, it's very important to include how to control the contaminants that come from oil, from dairies, from pesticides. I think currently there are a lot of lawsuits against the contaminant 123 TCP, and if we don't take corrective actions right now, look into the future, the name of the pesticide will be different, but same issue. Also, I reviewed the staff report, and I didn't capture, at least if it's there, SB 88, the bill that allows authorities to connect small water districts to big cities for consolidation. So I will ask if it's not there yet to include SB 88 to be added to the list of laws and requirements. In regards to flooding, I think it will be good to, in dealing with the floods and the water, I think if we take a holistic approach, some communities like Lamont have flooding issues, and on the other hand, we need to storage water. So when looking for options, like for example Lamont, looking, maybe options where to store that water instead of just sending the water somewhere else, and more than one issue can be resolved at once. And another issue that I heard is that sometimes it's the competition of wells being too near one to another from ag industry and communities. I think maybe a policy around that, to balance both needs will be good. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please. Do we have any other speakers? Okay. Do we have any commissioner questions or comments? Have any of the speakers? All right. That'll bring us to the conclusion of the workshop number 4. And what we'll do is this commission will make a motion to receive and file your comments that were made tonight and recorded. And they will be looked at by the staff as well as other people connected within the county. And there will be contacts made, I believe, to try to help you with your concerns. So thank you all for coming out tonight. Do you have any other commissioner questions or comments of the audience?
Motion to receive and file the report.
Have a second?
Second.
Have a motion by Commissioner Poole and a second by Commissioner Garcia. Would you cast your votes, please? Thank you, Madam Clerk. And with that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Our next meeting is May 11th, 2017.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned.